Tabulated results from the March 2nd general and regional elections have shown that the People's Progressive Party Civic won those elections by 15,416 votes and are on course to form the next government. I'm joined today by presidential candidate of the People's Progressive Party Civic and President-elect Dr. Irfaan Ali and Prime Ministerial candidate and Prime Minister-elect Brigadier retired Mark Phillips. Dr. Ali, Brigadier Phillips, good afternoon and welcome to the program.
Thank you very much for having us, Eddie.
Thank you, Eddie.
Since Guyanese voted on March 2nd, we're still awaiting an official declaration of those results so that your party can form the next government. Dr. Ali, could you give us, first and foremost, an update on the current situation in the country?
Well, Eddie, we are not waiting a formal declaration of the results. The results have already been announced. There are 10 certificates from the recount. There is a tabulated figure from the recount of the valid votes that was included in the Chief Elections Officer report. And those are the results that give the People's Progressive Party Civic a victory at the last elections. However, what we are seeing over the last 4 months is a high-handed approach of grand theft, where the government seems not disinterested in the will of the people, in the outcome of a democratic process, and in respecting the outcome of that democratic process, notwithstanding the fact that we live in a different era. We live in an era today where Guyana cannot exist outside of the rest of the world. We can't believe for a moment that we can isolate ourselves from CARICOM or the rest of the world and survive. Take, for example, our own internal and external challenges that we have. And I don't have to be specific with these challenges, but those challenges itself should allow us to understand how important it is for us to be a good international partner. And to be a good international partner, we have to be able to not only talk democracy, but show democracy. And the greatest show of democracy is respecting the will of the people. So we have a situation where the OS, the Organization of American States, CARICOM, the Commonwealth, they have all issued statements. And this is in addition to individual countries, important strategic partners, the ABC, EU. And they have all said that, listen, the recount figures demonstrates the will of the people. It is credible, it is acceptable, and it should be used for the formation of the new government. What we have seen since then is various steps to block the transition. But I want to say to you, Eddie, that nothing can block the transition into the new government. The will of the people cannot be wished away. These are not those days when you did not have the news outfit and you did not have the international presence that allowed you to wish away and wash away the will of the people. It will not happen. The will of the people at the end of the day will win, and the government that they elected to serve all the people of our country, to serve all Guyanese, will have to take office and ensure that we work, because it is the PP civic government that will take office. Of course, we have already said that it will be a government of great inclusion, and it is this government that will have the task of building the future for all Guyanese, with all Guyanese, by all Guyanese, here and in the diaspora, and of course, with partnership, from CARICOM and our ABC EU partners. So the narrative that some in government seems to want to spread cannot win at the end of the day. It is a narrative of division, it's a narrative of hate, it's a narrative of separation, it's a narrative that seeks to undermine democracy. It's a narrow narrative that is filled with fraud and lies and misrepresentation. Only this morning I saw an interview where Moses Nagamutu has joined the bandwagon in insulting regional leaders and prime ministers, saying they have no business in Guyana. Then why are we part of CARICOM? Why did we invite them? Why is the CARICOM head office here? Why? And he went on further to say, to make an accusation that one of the prime minister had a horse in the race. This is a level to which persons who perceive themselves to be leaders are willing to go to destroy the credibility of our country. This guy further went on to say that the diplomatic community, the international organizations, the OAS, the Commonwealth, CARICOM, that they have all expressed bias by speaking out and speaking the truth. And they're all aligned to the PPP in some way because they spoke the truth. So this is the current situation that we are in that is damaging to the credibility of our country. I think to a large extent, it is embarrassing to those leaders who are carrying this narrative. Some people would say they don't have the ability to be embarrassed. But as leaders, you have to know that in elections, there will be a government and an opposition. In 2015, when we sat down after the elections, although we had an election petition filed, the leadership did an internal review of ourselves. We did a review of our performance, and then we outlined a clear strategy as to where we had areas of weaknesses, where were the areas of strength, and what we had to do to ensure we gain the confidence of even more Guyanese. And the 2020 result is the test as to the way we operated. But what we are seeing is that level of irresponsibility from leaders not from a small cabal, a small collection of power-hungry and thirsty individuals who can never say, they can never say that they have the interests of Guyana at heart, because they're damaging our credibility and our image every day. So I will stop there. I know Brigadier Mark Phillips would want to add to what I said.
Your thoughts?
Well, thank you, Your Excellency. Thank you, Ed. You know, I'd like to repeat this. I said this before. Guyana pursue its national interests through the fostering of relationships with regional organizations, with hemisphere organizations, and with international organizations. The Caribbean community, CARICOM, not only because the Secretariat is located in Guyana, but Guyana has been one of the founding members of CARICOM. Guyana signed on to the Civil Society Charter of CARICOM. Guyana, being a member of the OAS and the Commonwealth of Nations has also signed similar civil society charters with those two organizations. So we are obligated to the upholding of the rule of law. We are obligated to respecting human rights. We are obligated to respecting the whole democratic tradition that is promoted by these organizations. You know, just about a week ago, at a townhouse meeting, former Foreign Minister of Guyana, Mr. Carl Greenidge, mentioned that diplomacy is the first line of defense for Guyana. And he mentioned that in relation to the ongoing Guyana-Venezuela border controversy. Now, how can we have CARICOM, the OAS, the Commonwealth of Nations supporting Guyana in its time of need when we're threatened by Venezuela? But then, in another instance where there's a political impasse and democracy is threatening Guyana, we wish to ignore and criticize the leadership of these organizations. As a people, how can we do that? If we are a player, when it comes to our interests of sovereignty, we have to remain as a player, an integral part of these organizations when it comes to our interests of maintaining the rule of law and decency among nations in the world.
Dr. Ali, both you and Brigadier Phillips would have spoken about the destruction, if you want to call it, of relationship by the coalition with not just regional bodies and regional governments, but also international bodies, the ABCE countries. These could have severe impacts on Guyana as a nation, because we've seen what happened in Venezuela, where because of an attempt to derail democracy, that country is facing severe sanctions from major players in the world. What are we staring in the face now with what is happening here?
Well, Eddie, you know, even without going to sanctions, when your country is threatened by sanctions, it has severe implications for your country's credibility in terms of the way investors look at your country, in terms of the way financial institutions look at your country, international financial institutions, and also those with commercial interests, the way in which bodies that are responsible for the rule of law, issues of money laundering, you are looked at in a totally different light just by the threat of sanctions. Because, and especially when that threat is one relating to the rule of law, democracy, and good governance. That is the hallmark of every nation. That is the core of every nation. And when these are the things that are threatened, giving rise to threat of sanctions, then your country is viewed at totally differently, especially at a time when we will have sophisticated investors coming in here. At a time when we will have revenue stream from the oil and gas sector. At a time when we are going to have to deal with a pandemic that would have that would create a tremendous damage on our financial and economic system. At a time when we'll have to mobilize financing from international institutions. If this little grouping believe that they can, or this country can live through sanctions, they're crazy. They are crazy. Every single citizen would be affected. Every single business will be affected. Every aspect of our lives will be affected. And let me be clear with you. Individual sanctions, collective sanctions, sanctions to the country, it is not only about traveling restrictions. It has also to do with addressing those who are complicit in thwarting democracy, those who are complicit in denying the people what they voted for, those who are complicit in ignoring all international organizations' warning and reports. They will be dealt with individually and collectively. But the country too will be dealt with. Financial flows will not come from the international organizations. Our revenue from the oil and gas sector will be frozen. Foreign investment will dry up. These are the type of things that will cripple our country. And unfortunately, if this cabal continue in the way they're going, then collectively as a nation, so the implications are grave, we will have to understand that sanctions would have to be there to bring those who are oppressing our country, to bring the oppressors of democracy, good governance, and the rule of law to their knees and make them answerable so that our country can be returned on a democratic pathway. That is why, Eddie, it is so important that all our voices, every Guyanese, must add their voice in ensuring the right thing is done. And we are confident that good sense will prevail. You see, we have a challenge of ensuring the propaganda and the narrative that has been used to create division is uprooted from this country. We have to uproot that narrative. We have to uproot all and every effort to divide our people politically, socially, racially. We have to uproot it because it is only in a collective manner understanding who we are and what we stand for as Guyanese, the Guyanese identity, ensuring that we build systems, programs, and a development pathway that addresses the needs of everyone, that would remove that fear and destroy or uproot this narrative of division. But the foundation of getting there has to be one that is built on the rule of law, democracy, and respect for the will of the people.
Brigadier, your thoughts on, because we've already seen threats, should we go down the road of some undemocratic rule, that there will be serious consequences for Guyana. Your thoughts, picking up where Dr. Ali would have left off.
Well, as Dr. Ali mentioned, you have a situation of political instability. And if you have political instability, it will affect the economics, it can affect the whole social activities of the people within the country. And from a security standpoint, it will affect a lot of security cooperation agreements and defense-related agreements and, that we have with neighboring countries and with regional organizations. For example, the capacity building that our police force or defense force depend on through its relationship, for example, with the Southern Command of the United States government. That will have to be placed on hold because you're now a country where democracy is threatened, and many of those arrangements, many of those security arrangements will have to be placed on hold until we get our house in order. That is the reality. So it's not just the economic side will be affected, but the whole developmental side will be affected. And that developmental side will just, like providing like housing and goods to people, but human development is affected. Scholarships for people is affected by friendly nations.
Clearly, Dr. Ali, what you outlined, both you and Brigadier Phillips, these are serious implications for Guyana as a country,
Of course.
a small country. But I'm sure there is some way where how all of these could be avoided quite easily.
Well, Eddie, it's easy. We have to stop our country from going rogue. And to stop our country from going rogue, we have to respect the outcome of the March 2nd elections. The international organizations have already established their voices on this matter. CARICOM has established its voice. And I think that good sense must prevail. And in keeping with the results of the recount, which shows clearly the People's Progressive Party Civic would have won these elections, that those results must be used and will be used for the declaration of the new government and the president, the swearing in of the new president, and then, of course, the important task of bringing our people together. So it has to start, and we have started this. I have, in all my address and all my interviews, stressed this very important point, that we have to be able to bring all the players around the table. And we have to be able to embrace a common agenda that is inclusive of ideas from every single stakeholder, that is inclusive of the skills and skill set of every Guyanese that is available to take our country forward, that brings the diaspora, because the diaspora has tremendous potential for us, that brings the diaspora in with us in a collective manner to pursue a singular vision, a singular set of objectives aimed at transforming the lives of our people, the lives of every Guyanese, and aimed at reducing inequality, aimed at bringing more Guyanese from every cross-section of life out of poverty, aimed at empowering every Guyanese so they can fulfill their dreams and aspirations, investing in a social sector that can give the best possible primary health care with investment at a strategic level in specialized health care, ensuring that our educational system is invested in so that no child can be left behind from nursery to university, supporting our children in achieving their educational goals, whether it's by expanded scholarship program, building our human resource capacity now to meet the needs of the future, understanding what the gap is in terms of our human resource potential. So in the short term, whilst we have to buy that skill set, we are training Guyanese to fill those spots in the future, to manage all the new areas of growth and development, to support the private sector in modernizing and expanding themselves so that they can be equipped, they can be certified to benefit from not only oil and gas sector, but the support has to be in the traditional sectors as well as in the new areas. Support for tourism, forestry, mining, agriculture, expanding agriculture, looking at the sugar industry, not only rebuilding that industry, but looking at areas of diversification that would increase profitability, that would enhance the skill set of the workforce. These are all important things that is in the manifesto that all of us as Guyanese can embrace. A housing program in which every Guyanese can not dream, but can realize the dream of home ownership, pursuing a strong public-private partnership set in the development of our country, in financing areas, and very importantly, enhancing our image in the international community, enhancing our relationship with our strategic partners. We have to embrace in a greater way the ABCEU, the United States, Canada, UK, and the European Union. We have to work with them on improving our competitiveness, work with them in terms of accessing new markets, having technology transfer, opening up new areas of growth and development, training our people. So the task ahead is so important that the opportunities that it brings with it is enough to pull our people together, all Guyanese together. This is not the time for us to hate each other or dislike each other. This is a time for us to embrace the results of the election, embrace each other, embrace the future, and in a collective manner, pursue the goals, pursue the benefits that the future can bring for every Guyanese. The longer we allow this disintegration caused by a few to continue, the longer we're delaying our ability and our collective efforts in pursuing what I would have just outlined in a very broad manner.
Brigadier Phillips, I want to bring you in here because there seems to be a major concern among Guyanese with regards to safety and security. Crime seems to be increasing almost daily. Your background is in security. You've served the Guyana Defense Force for a number of years. Your thoughts on addressing this issue, which is a critical issue in terms of economic development of any country, safety and security?
Well, you know, Eddie, safety and security, as you mentioned, is critical for the development of Guyana. And frankly speaking, we are roughly about 120 days behind time. By now, we should have been doing our 100-day review of all the policies outlined by the president-elect, you know, as it pertains to good governance. By now, we should have stabilized our society politically, and we would have been working on the reforms that were set out in our manifesto for the security sector, the police force, the defense force, the prison service, the fire service, and other agencies related to law enforcement in Guyana. We have a policy, but we are constrained in the sense that we cannot start the implementation of the policy. So we need to have this political impasse behind us so we could start to implement what we set out in our manifesto, so the Guyanese people can benefit from reduction in crime in our society, and generally from a more secure and a more safe society to conduct their daily activities.
Dr. Ali, you would have spoken time and again about issues of safety, security, the increase in crime, and so forth. And I know this is something that you have mentioned before that you will tackle head on.
Yeah, let me say this, Eddie. First of all, safety and security is an important aspect of not only our current development, but the future. Because the level of investment that we will be pursuing, the level of transformation that will take place in our economy, and the growth in wealth definitely would raise issues of internal security. But we must not forget also we have our external threats.
Yes.
And that is why, first and foremost, I would want to work very closely with the ABCEU because we are all connected, and CARICOM also. CARICOM has to play an important role. And our neighbors, Brazil, for example, in ensuring that we build a national strategic security governance system that is reflective of both the internal and external threat, one in which we have the best transfer of technology and exchange of human resources with our international partners. The US, for example, is a very important and strategic partner for us, and we have to work with them on enhancing our own capability, on supporting our capabilities here, and working towards a common agenda in tackling white-collar crime and tackling issues of drug trafficking, money laundering, and of course those external threats, and having a security system that is proactive and not reactive. But outside of the hardcore security reform and issues, we also have to look at how we can improve the life of all Guyanese, all segment of the Guyanese population, look at which are vulnerable areas, who are vulnerable, and we have to have a reform program that target the human side also, so that we can reform people, we can transform their lives, we can give them new opportunities, we can integrate them into society. The prison system also, how do we modernize the prison system, moving away from a strictly holding area and lockdown as a prison type of environment into an environment in which we can start talking about reform, reintegration, transforming lives. And a lot of this has to do with education too. Educating the population generally about these plans and how important it is for security, for the security of our country, and also for these vulnerable persons also. So that is on the aspect of security. But the issue here also in moving forward is ensuring that we quickly rebuild our credibility internationally. Our credibility has been severely affected and damaged as a result of what is going on now. We went through this period for 28 years when no investor would have looked at Guyana because of the image we had globally. So image is a very important issue that we have to address. Also, Eddie, we are an important player in CARICOM. I think that the leadership of CARICOM now seems very much proactive in the CSME, having that integration at a wider level, economic integration, cultural, social integration. And this allows us to really reassess and reposition Guyana in this whole new framework, this new paradigm. And we have to have a serious conversation with CARICOM, for example, and other strategic partners, in how Guyana, with its great agricultural potential, can realize its long-held attribute as becoming the main food source. To do this, of course, requires a lot of capital investment. And that is what the resources from oil and gas allows us to do. How we can build these new sectors, enhance those traditional sectors to meet the demand of our CARICOM partners. So a lot of what we do also would have to be on restructuring the trade arrangement and the economy to reflect the new position Guyana will be in with resources, additional resources from oil and gas. We also cannot ignore what is taking place in Suriname with their gas find also, their oil find. So we have to have really a strategic development that takes into consideration what is taking place there, what is taking place in CARICOM, and how Guyana can enhance its infrastructure and its capability to meet other economic opportunities that lies within the region and externally.
Dr. Ali, all of this, in my view, maybe will lead to a transformation of the economy, which in turn is expected to benefit all Guyanese. But there still seems to be some fear among Guyanese of all ethnic groups, of security-related kind of fears. How do you, as president, intend to address this issue, and how, maybe you can outline how you intend to tackle them?
Well, any fear comes, a lot of the fear that exists today comes from the type of narrative that people are spilling out there. And I don't want to call persons who are doing this leaders, because they can never be classified as a leader. A leader is a transformational person. And if you go, and I've avoided mentioning their names because I don't think it's worth it. But if you look at some of the leaders' Facebook, or some of those persons who consider themselves leaders and their social media comments, and what they're calling for and what they're insinuating, and the way they're trying to mislead people, it is astonishing. And that itself drives fear. And what they're doing is designed to drive that fear. What they're doing is designed to bring discomfort. It is designed to make you feel fearful. It is designed to threaten existence. So we can't succumb to that narrative. If we succumb to that narrative, then we are playing in their hands. We have to destroy that narrative. And you can only destroy that narrative by embracing an inclusionary collective vision for all Guyanese. And that is why you have to stick on a narrative that is positive, one that promotes Guyana and Guyanese, and one that promotes love and harmony. So they can't entrap you in the narratives. That is the first thing. The second thing, of course, is the real threats and the real issues that exist on the ground that we spoke of earlier that must be addressed in security sector reform and so on. So I just wanted to add that. Another threat that we have now is the COVID pandemic. We have seen a totally disastrous response. And it has to be with the level of disorganization that exists at the level of government. We tried a lot to mobilize the civil society. We mobilized all political parties. We worked together. And we started the education aspect, educating the population about COVID-19. We started a national mask wearing drive, and we supported that by delivering hundreds of thousands of masks all across Guyana. We started the food drive, having hampers delivered to families. We then went into medical drive and medical outreaches for families who were basically locked in because many clinics were not operating and still not operating as per normal. So we had to have community visits. All of this we did. And we have called consistently on government to become actively involved, especially in helping the people and their immediate needs. So we have pushed heavily for the CDC to move quickly with the hamper program, the food distribution program. I've seen now that that program, with the support of resources from the US government, with the support of civil society resources raised from civil society, and of course, taxpayers' dollars, that is used now on this food drive. I'm hopeful that that food drive would reach every single community, and I encourage every Guyanese who are in need to ensure they're registered, to ensure they benefit from this. It is something that we have championed, and it's something that, that would bring relief and help to Guyanese families. The situation is rough. We have been traveling all across the country. It is not easy on families. It is not easy on the private sector. It is not easy on businesses. It is not easy on employers or employees. It is a sad situation. And we have to be able to embrace and embark on a series of measures that would reignite and restart this economy and bring benefit to our people as quickly as possible.
Brigadier Phillips, your thoughts here on both issues, the one to deal with the pandemic and how the government will respond to that, and also these fears on the ground among the populace.
Well, Eddie, you know, with regards to the COVID-19, I'm convinced that the expertise to deal with COVID-19 exists in Guyana. They just need some restructuring and some redirection. The reality is that the present government is more preoccupied with the political side of remaining in office, and they're not focusing as they should on dealing with this pandemic. If we can have the transition as is required after the elections, if you can have the transition now, we are ready to go, we're rearing to go, and we will restructure and redirect the resources, and the Guyanese people will see almost immediately a better approach to dealing with this pandemic.
Dr. Ali, I'm going to give you the chance to wrap things up, and this has to do with there seems to be among the population, the patients are running thin with regards to where we are with the elections, and they expect their new government should have been in office already. What do you want to say to the Guyanese people? We have just maybe 2 minutes more to the Guyanese people as we wait the transition.
Well, a lot of Guyanese brothers and sisters say to me, you know, you're very patient. And I said, you know, there is no price attached to democracy. There is no price attached to good governance. What I've learned from all of this is that with the level of international and national support that I have received and we have received, we have even a greater responsibility to govern in an equitable manner, to govern in a transparent manner, to govern in an accountable manner, not to disappoint the hundreds of thousands of Guyanese here in the diaspora and all those who are standing on the side of democracy. This is not the time to lose patience. This is not the time to, as I said, to distrust and to hate each other. This is a time when we have to be the best we can be for our country. This is a time when we have to stand up as strong as we can for our country. And we are not standing alone. We are not in this struggle alone. We are in this struggle with the support from the international community. We are in this with the support from regional leaders in CARICOM. We are in this, and we are on the right side of the issue. And you have to take comfort in the fact that you are on the right side of history, you're on the right side of the issue, and we are doing what is right for our country. At the end of the day, we will all be able to reflect and say to ourselves how decent and honest we were to our country, to our conscience, to our neighbors, and to what we did. I saw today businessmen who celebrated in 2015. One in particular, I won't mention his name, who celebrated with the same number of valid votes almost. Today, trying to sell the propaganda and the narrative of the AP and UAFC. We all have a responsibility at the end of the day to be clear to our conscience. A lot of leaders call themselves religious, but you know, being religious is one thing. Being fearful of God is a different thing. Being true to your conscience and being able to sleep well at night, knowing that you're doing the decent thing and you're fighting the good fight, is totally different from those who are trying to illegally occupy office. So to all Guyanese, we are in this together. We have to rely on each other. We have to rally with each other. We have to look at each other in the eyes, in the face, and embrace each other. Embrace the future together and understand that there is no Guyana without all of us. There is no future without all of us. When this is all over, we have to come together. We have to build together. We have to reach together. We have to win together. We have to be the best we can be as Guyanese together. Thank you.
Dr. Mohammed Irfaan Ali, the President-elect, I want to thank you very much for joining us this afternoon, and Brigadier Retired Mark Phillips, the Prime Minister-elect. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us. And to our viewers, we want to say thanks for being part of this program.